Tonight, New York State Senate Leader Dean Skelos reportedly the focus of a federal corruption probe. Well, first we had Shelley Silver, now Dean Skelos. It's going to be hard for even the biggest supporters of Albany to deny the scope of the problem. And yes, he's on our panel. Then, tens of thousands of kids in New York skipping standardized tests as part of the opt-out movement. So why are the schools, instead of the parents, getting threatened with sanctions? Also, more of the people just polled in New Jersey say they do not trust Senator Bob Menendez and he ought to resign. Is it still possible when you're under investigation to govern effectively? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and we do start in Albany tonight, and yet another big-name state lawmaker appears to be on the legal hot seat. The New York Times breaking the story saying federal prosecutors are presenting evidence to a grand jury for a case against Senate Majority Leader Dean Skelos. Paper saying that Skelos' son, Adam, works for a company that got a contract with Nassau County, even though it was not the lowest bidder. That happened in his father's district. Feds also reported looking into a $20,000 payment Adam allegedly got from a title insurance company that he never even worked for. Skelos, the top Republican in Albany, one of the top Democrats, Shelley Silver, as you know, had to resign as Assembly Speaker after he was indicted on corruption charges. Preet Bharara, the prosecutor going after both of these guys, has slammed the culture of corruption in Albany, saying deal-making is done by three men in a room. Now, two of those men facing those corruption allegations. Now, Governor Cuomo even joked about the trio during his State of the State address.
We went to Israel last year, and we had a great trip. And this year, we're going to be our own version of the Three Amigos. A little different than the past, but the same basic idea.
You'll remember it was Governor Cuomo who created the Moreland Commission to root out corruption, only to disband it a year later. Times also saying that Silver, Skelos investigations both stemmed, at least in part, from that commission. So ethics in Albany still remains murky at best. It still looks like many politicians still getting the friends and family deal. That's certainly the optics of the recent headlines. And on your screen is the ethics deal that was just included in Governor Cuomo's budget. It doesn't look like any of these things would address the types of things that Skelos accused of, but our panel can set us straight on this. We bring in Richard Brodsky, former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now senior fellow at Demos, professor at NYU, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, Shelley Mayer, Democratic State Assemblywoman representing Yonkers, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And you know, if you needed any further evidence, there was a poll that came out today from Monmouth, and the question was, which state do you believe has the most political corruption? And remember, in the union, we have states like New Jersey, we have Louisiana, and I can go up and down, but guess who topped the list? New York State is believed to be the most politically corrupt state in the entire nation. And Shelley, when you heard the news about Skelos, not that New York needed or Albany needed another black eye here, but did it catch people by surprise? They've been talking about this for a while, maybe not the details, but certainly the specter that he could be looked at.
I think there was a general sense that it was likely that he was being reviewed. There were prior leaks about that. And I think, you know, my perspective is I'll wait to see what the complaint says and read what the allegations are rather than leaks in the paper. My issue with Shelley Silver, and I suspect it would be my issue if Dean Skelos was indicted, has to do with the institution. The guilt or innocence is something they have the right to fight about, and they have the presumption of innocence. But we have an institution that needs to run, and it needs the absolute attention of the leaders, and the leaders have to be able to represent the members. So I'll wait to see what the details are. I'm not going to prejudge based on what I saw in the Times today. But if it goes a step further and there's an indictment, I suspect the Senate will look hard, as we did in the Assembly Democratic Conference, about having a leader that's indicted.
The institution, Richard, and you've been its most vocal defender. You see what the public thinks, and not, please, you know what I mean.
I need a lawyer here.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you are.
You're not alone.
So, yeah, exactly, get in line apparently. But the point is, for all of don't cast the whole lot in.
You know,
Look, how do you even argue when the two most significant legislators outside of the governor?
One of the many reasons that I am delighted to be an invited guest here on a regular basis is this show is about real things. Congratulations. Except every once in a while, you read a headline and you announce that the world is ending.
Please don't tell me you're going to minimize this.
I minimize what? A story in the New York Times? You bet I'm going to minimize it. Now, when there's more to it than a leak from a prosecutor, as Shelley said, there are bunches of levels you can look at this. This is serious stuff. It's not just serious for Dean Skelos and his family, whom I wish well. It's not just serious for the Assembly and the Senate, who I really wish well. It's serious for the people of the state. And I am not going to come to either private, public, or political conclusions based on one darn story.
But the problem is, Dom, it's not one story. There's a familiar ring to all these stories.
Who are you talking to now?
Well, you know
This is
what?
who you turn to?
I think, with all due respect,
Mr.
he may be
Hulk
closer to
than
the
all-
public perception of Albany, fair or not, than you might be. Okay?
He is.
And the point is,
I was going to defend what
was-
you
yeah,
just
yeah.
said.
Wait a minute, did I
Yeah,
apologize?
because
already?
I have a problem with us condemning Mr. Skelos. He hasn't even been indicted of anything. Now, if it turns out that the New York Times reported it, so the world comes to an end. Some of us don't pay attention, frankly, to the New York Times as much as others do.
You read the Post.
That's insulting. but, no, seriously, Richard, and you know how I feel. I like the Assemblywoman, but you know how I feel about Albany. I have not minced words. I have told you that I believe that most of them could be convicted of committing a crime, and I stand by that. And I think that my side of reasoning is starting to come
not
more.
fair, Mose. It's
Okay,
not fair.
okay. You may feel it's not fair, Assemblywoman. I respect what you're saying. But with Skelos, Richard, there's a problem. I mean, see, here's the issue. They never thought in a million years that a federal independent prosecutor would look at their actions. They never thought that.
I know we're still waiting for action from the grand jury, but you know there were similar leaks before there was action against Sheldon Silver, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to consider. There were leaks that Sheldon Silver was being
not
investigated.
with this level of specificity.
Okay, so if we take the next step, if the next step happens, and Dean Skelos is also indicted, you've got the New York State equivalent of.
and just one little point here, and it doesn't refute your point that there hasn't even been an indictment handed down. But Dean Skelos' office, who a month ago or so denied all these charges, are now, by their own office's admission, cooperating with the investigators. That's not an, falling on the sword and acknowledgement of guilt. But that's a lot different than denying it, which they've already done to this point. I'm sorry.
We're dealing with the New York State equivalent of Mitch McConnell, who's the leader of the Senate, and let's say Nancy Pelosi, if she was actually still Speaker of the House. If the two of them were caught up in federal charges or allegations of federal charges within 4 months of each other, people would be descending on Washington with pitchforks.
But can I stop for a minute? We did take action with Sheldon Silver. You're talking as if nothing happened. We have these two folks that you're equating that were indicted. The fact is, when Sheldon Silver was indicted, and it wasn't his choice, the Assembly said you have to go. We took steps and we made it happen for the sake of the institution. Again,
That's very fair from the Assembly, and the Assembly took action, and I'm sure if Skelos is indicted, the Senate will take similar action. But it does speak to the possibility that there is a systemic problem in Albany.
And whether
that
it's
opens the question as to how do
structural
we
or
fix
not. And I think there's another element to this, which is, how did this all come about? The governor, created a commission, and then he personally disbanded the commission. And what the commission found before it was shut down was at least the basis for where we see this going right now. And by the way, as I understand it, 8 other state senators are being questioned about the Skelos involvement right now. Now, it doesn't mean that they're subject to the investigation. I'm not connecting any dots or anything else. But if anybody wants to bet me, I'll take odds that it doesn't stop with Dean Skelos. There'll be more names that'll come out of this. And whether it is, and you're closer to this than anybody, and you a close second, I know it was real changes that went into the ethics reform. I know a lot of people think it didn't go far enough. But will we always have a problem where people are expected to do a full-time job, but they don't really have a time to do a second job that would pay them what they'd make in the private sector? is there always inherently going to be too much of a temptation, and B, sometimes almost a need to supplement the income on the outside, not to justify what they do in cutting corners, but it's there. And it's there more than if we paid him $200,000 a year and didn't let him do anything but do this.
I think there's a wide variety of conduct. Some is unethical or questionably ethical and not illegal. Some is illegal. We are trying to move the illegal definition closer and closer to unethical because that's what people understandably expect. If someone is dodging the system and getting money in a way that is perceived to be unethical, most people think it should be illegal.
Could the reform, though,
It took
Assemblywoman,
us a step.
would the reform, though, have gotten somebody's kid for a no-show job? Was that
It's
addressed in the
already
reform?
No show job
I
is
know it's
already
illegal, but the transparency to find out about
But
it's
what
different.
it did do is address the disclosure of clients of attorneys, which has been an incredible sticking point, and Richard and I both know this, and it went a long way towards that.
The point Shelley makes is correct. The big corruption is legal, and it's not the personal aggrandizement, as bad as that is. It's the exchange of hundreds of millions of dollars in legal campaign contributions. That seems to get shunted to one side. What matters in the lives of New Yorkers is the legislative outcomes. In both the Shelley Silver case and in the rumors about Dean Skelos, there is no substantial allegation that the big, important healthcare, education, taxation issues were skewed by whatever the behaviors
Wait
were.
a minute, hold
don't
on
know
a minute.
that. We don't
Shelley
know. I don't
Silver,
really know
hold
that.
on a second. I mean, the idea of funneling money as one, I
You're-
mean,
what in the public sector outcomes that matter
how
in
about
people's
trust
lives?
of legislation?
No.
You're talking about actual legislation that's gone through? We don't know. We don't know whether whether legislation has been altered because
the
of the...
allegations do not include the notion that there's bribery for public acts on the things that matter in the lives of New Yorkers. Look, I don't want to be
disagree. No,
jammed. I do not want to be jammed into the position of defending unsavory conduct. But I want to point out that the big unsavory conduct is legal.
Why not a permanent Moreland Commission with subpoena power that can basically pick up the job that the original
It's called
Moreland had?
J-COPE, it exists.
But it doesn't seem to be doing all that much. I mean, it doesn't...
We just put more resources into it. Look, I think the trouble that we're not, and this is where I disagree with Richard, and I do think you have your finger on it, people, ordinary people, are not distinguishing these fine lines we're talking about, unethical but not illegal, campaign finance. Their general perception is, what the heck is going on up there?
And you should be, honestly, more mad about it than any of
And
us
I
because
am.
you're the one getting lumped in with these creeps.
And I took one of the people who took the lead with the Sheldon Silver, and I have the consequences of it, which is something good came out of it. I don't apologize for either unethical or illegal conduct, and I talk to voters every day who are incredibly frustrated about it. I do think you have to be technically correct. This is where I agree with Richard. You can't just say, because the New York Times said he's being reviewed, that all of a sudden we know this, or that with Sheldon Silver we don't have evidence yet that the outcome of legislation was changed. I don't agree with Richard. I think it may be the case, but we haven't seen it.
According to Citizens Union, since the year 2000, there have been 28 legislators leaving under this kind of a cloud. It's about 5%. In that same period of time, 1/3 of the governors, 50% of the controllers have been dragged away in chains. Now,
But I know
wait,
you've made
hold
this
it.
point before, but it almost sounds like you're mitigating the actions of the legislature
I-
because there's worse guys in the
I
governor's
am
seats.
trying to respond to the notion of what constitutes public opinion about this. We're having 3 separate conversations. It's all getting muddled. If your concern, Shelley's concern, is public opinion, then I would hope that if we're going to use statistics and say there's a crime wave going on there, as some irresponsible people say, then no names to be mentioned, then we ought to look at these numbers in realistic terms. I'm appalled that 5% of the legislature have been involved in this stuff. I don't know that
Richard,
constitutes a crime
I hate
wave.
to be the one to tell you this. I know that
you don't.
you support. You have a theory that if the legislature is paid full time, that this corruption will stop. It will not stop. You have people that are not like, and I'm not saying it's because
Yeah.
I like her, it's because she's effective. So I'm excluding you, Assemblywoman, and a majority of the people that are in Albany.
progress.
But you got about 40% that could be indicted. That could be indicted in Albany.
Broken 50%.
That's good.
And if a federal prosecutor could do this, could go that one, that one, that one, that one, and indict them all.
You can indict a ham sandwich. And the famous
You're right about that. You're right
words-
about that. Unless your name is Eric Garner or one of those people.
Now we're going down to fourth line. Okay, but
You played the race card, didn't
No,
you?
no.
okay, but Andrew, I think you said it the best. If people make the error of saying, "Oh, this is just another story," the idea that the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader in Washington would be under investigation or under indictment.
If you left it at that, you'd
that's-
be right. But you don't. And you don't.
No, and by the way, it gets worse, so you'll be happy about this one. And the governor who created the commission, rightly or wrongly, there's a perception that he stopped the commission right when there was stuff that was coming out. There's no evidence to what I'm saying, but that is the perception of the general public right now. That all of a sudden, look what they started turning up. He got the budget deal he wanted, so he turned the lights off on the commission. But the problem was, Bahara had enough stuff to go on. Again, this is all conjecture, but that is the perception of the public. And for what I'm asking is, we all hear rumors, we all hear innuendos, but some of the principal players that are no longer, or a principal player no longer with the governor right now, there could be more people talking as to the calendar of events and why things were shut down. Is there a concern in Albany right now that it's not just legislators that could be under some additional scrutiny? Some other players are going to also have to explain the timeline as to why the commission was really shut down and who knew what at the point that it was.
I don't think we can speculate as to what the U.S. attorney.
Oh, it's fun. Play along.
No,
Yeah.
no, I really can't, because he could be looking at that. I mean, they're entitled to investigate they have a tremendous breadth of opportunity.
You do admit when a constituent says it sounds really curious, Assemblywoman.
They don't say it so nicely as
Yeah,
that.
right?
I can assure you.
Yeah.
No, they don't. They say, we like you, you're okay, we disagree with you, but at least we think you're ethical. And then I say, you're right. We can't have a place where there are people either indicted or who appear to be unethical. And we have to do better at it, and I will continue to make those fights. But whether a U.S. attorney is looking at why the Moreland and the timing of the Moreland, I have no idea what he's looking at.
All right. Get involved in the conversation, everybody. Go over to Facebook and Twitter, sound off on our question. Has corruption in Albany become the norm? Is that the perception that you have? I know Dominic, I think he's varied between 60 and 40% here, but either way, where do you fall down
on a
on?
good night.
Okay. Up next, more than 100,000 kids this week skipped standardized tests in the state of New York. Their parents, they are in the opt-out movement, but instead of punishing the parents who made that choice, the state might punish the schools or the wrong people getting taught a lesson.